Well, as you can see, we're definitely not in my studio. That's for sure. We're not in my studio. Oh, that's right. I'm in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. The Slot Olympics will be tomorrow. I am the reigning champ, even if I can't retain it tomorrow. My goal is to finish top 10, and that's what's going on tomorrow. I'll still put out at least one video tomorrow, like I did today. I was traveling a bunch today. That's why I was only able to put out one video. It did well, though, so I can't complain. Very happy about that. But I still wanted to do a live show before I went to bed because today has been, man, it's just more bad news for the Pac-12. That's all I can say. And I realize that this is basically it's basically a record that just keeps playing over and over like a broken record, over and over. But it's starting to get more serious, far more serious. It's going beyond, well, I think this is going to happen. I think that's going to happen. There's actual talks going on now. People are actually talking to each other. So, past couple of days, I've been talking about Arizona. Arizona literally reached out to the Big 12. Why? Because the Pac-12 actually had a TV deal, but it was so bad, it was so terrible that they didn't even vote on it. They said, George Cloud, man, come on, man. No, that is too low. Go renegotiate it, and then we'll vote on it. Maybe, perhaps. And the number that I'm seeing, guys, from multiple sources now, and I might do a video on that as far as how many sources I'm seeing saying this particular number. 22 million per team per year. That's 10 million less per team than the Big 12. And remember, the Pac-12 is going to have fewer members than the Big 12, and yet they're still going to make 10 million less per team than the Big 12. So what I'm hearing is the offer was, which it was rejected, not even voted on, 120 million from Amazon, which would have been 12 million per team per year, and then 100 million for ESPN, which is another 10 million per team per year. So altogether, 22 million per team per year. That is chump change. I don't blame the Pac-12 presidents for saying, no, we're not even voting on this. We're not going to sign the grant of rights. It's still wide open. Folks, the Pac-12 is running out of time, and now it looks like teams are bailing. So we were talking about Arizona literally reaching out to the Big 12. It wasn't the other way around. Arizona reached out to the Big 12, and if I had to guess, this what I'm about to say is hearsay. I don't have any proof of this, so this is just me trying to figure out what happened. I'm trying to figure out what happened. So Arizona reached out to the Big 12, right? Today we're hearing that Brett Gormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, started talking to the rest of the Four Corners. So if I had to guess, this is how I think it went. Okay, you ready? Arizona talks to the Big 12, says, "Hey, the deal was 22 million per team per year. Do you think you can at least get us to 30?" Big 12 is like, "Oh yeah, you'll make the same as us." I mean, I know the guarantee is only. Let me turn this AC off. It's too loud. Anyways, in the contract, only 20 million is guaranteed, but y'all got to realize that's the baseline. That's guaranteed no matter what. But they'll get the same as everybody else. It'll be 31.5 per team per year. Maybe they bump the value of the Big 12 contract up. I don't see it coming down for sure. It either stays the same or goes up. So by signing with the Big 12, these teams will make at least 10 million per team per year. So that conversation happened. Arizona reached out to the Big 12. They talked, and I'm assuming they talked about the numbers. And then Arizona goes over to the other teams, and they're like, this is a much better situation. And Arizona and Brett Yormark, during the discussions, maybe it went something like this. Brett Yormark's like, what do you think about the other teams? You think they would possibly want to come? Yeah, I do think they would want to come. I think it's worth the talk. I think you should try to talk to those teams. So then Brett Yormark reaches out to the rest of the teams. That's how I think it went down. I don't exactly know how it went down. I wasn't in a room. But it makes sense because the day before, Arizona reached out to the Big 12, and now today we're hearing that Brett Yormark is reaching out to the rest of the Pac-12. this is and then later on in the day, I'm hearing the number is 6. A total of 6 teams are talking to the Big 12. Now, that was only by one source, so I'm not confident about that. I'm very confident about the Four Corner schools, like super confident. Now, y'all know me. Just because I'm not confident about something doesn't mean I'm not going to make a video on it, okay? So, yeah, I'm going to make a video on that tomorrow, even though I'm not confident that they're actually talking to 6. They are talking to 4, for sure. Everybody was talking about that today. Every source you can think of, ESPN, CBS, 365, whoever, SI, Sports Illustrated, all of them. They were 247 was talking about them. All of them were talking to the Big 12. Talking about the Big 12 getting those teams. Excuse me, my thoughts got mixed up. John T, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, heads up, Arizona is Mountain Time Zone, not Pacific. Sometimes it's Mountain Time Zone, sometimes it's Pacific. I actually did some research on that because I was very, very confused about the time zone in Arizona, and it turns out they just don't do daylight savings time. So between March and November, which is mostly college football. Remember, September, October, November, only December if you have a championship game or whatever, bowl game. But from March through November, they actually are Pacific time zone. Or is it November? Whatever daylight savings time is. Now I'm confusing myself. I think it's March to November. And then, of course, the other 4 or 5 months, they're actually Mountain Time Zone. They don't switch their clocks. So part of the year, they're Pacific Time Zone, and part of the year, they're Mountain Time Zone. So during the college football season, they would actually be the Pacific Time Zone. So that would be capturing, if you get the Arizona schools, that would be capturing the Pacific Time Zone, which is what Brett Yormark wants. So that confused me at first, but I did research, and that's the real thing. Crazy, ain't it? I didn't realize that Arizona did not do daylight savings time. I thought everybody did that as far as the United States goes. So that surprised me. But bottom line is, in the regular season, college football season, Arizona is actually Pacific time zone. So if the Big 12 can pick up the Arizona schools, and it looks like they will, then there you go. The Pacific time zone is captured. However, I still think that Brett Yormark wants the Big 12 to have a footprint in the state of California. So if you're a San Diego State fan or a Fresno State fan, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. I know we heard that San Diego State was going to be announced as a member of the Pac-12. That hasn't happened. Well, this could be the reason. No TV deal, or a TV deal, and it's just garbage, trash. Nobody signed the grant of rights. So, yeah, that's probably why we're not hearing an announcement on it. And then the Big 12 can turn around, grab the Four Corners and San Diego State. It just depends on how much Brett Yormark wants that California footprint. I think specifically San Diego State would bring the most value because that's Southern California. Don't get me wrong, guys. I like Fresno State. I think Fresno State has a better brand than San Diego State, but San Diego State has a better location than Fresno State. So I think the Big 12 would choose location over brand. So I know that's not what Fresno State fans want to hear, but those are facts. However, I could be wrong. Maybe they do want the brand and they do get Fresno State. All I'm saying is don't lose hope. You still have a chance in this because I do think that the Big 12 would still want a footprint in the state of California. John T with another $2 donation says, I'd expect that weirdness from California. Not switching over to daylight savings time. Yeah, I would expect that from California, not from Arizona, but it is what it is. Arizona does not use daylight savings time, so technically, yeah, if Brett Yormark and the Big 12 goes out and gets the Arizona schools, there's your Pacific time zone because they are in Pacific time zone up until November, so you would have to count that. Now, let's rewind for a second, all right? So, talking about, I'm hearing rumors. Now, this is not, I'm not confident on this as much as I am the Four Corners. I'm very confident about that because I've seen multiple sources talking about that. But with the 6 teams, let's go into the speculation zone for a little bit, all right? Just for a little bit, okay? So with the 6 teams rumor going on, we know that 4 of those would be, the Four Corner schools. Who are the other 2 schools? Does the Big 12 think that they have a shot with Oregon and Washington? I don't know. This is where the aisle is split. Some people are like, no, don't let them in, because the moment the Big Ten comes to calling for Oregon and Washington, they're going to bolt. You're right. I agree with that. Then the other side of the aisle is like, well, that doesn't matter. You bring them in and you use that cash cow for however long they're in there. And remember, a while back, I did a video on Brett Yormark actually showing them a contract, a TV deal, granted rights, whatever you want to call it, where Oregon and Washington could come into the Big 12 and they would have an out clause, but only for the Big 10. So basically, if they did that, Oregon and Washington could leave for the Big 10 anytime they want if they were invited, and there would be no buyout. I understand where he's coming from right there. He just wants those big brands, and they would make money for the Big 12 for the duration that they're in there. But don't bend all the way backwards for them. Make at least a small buyout for them. Don't make it, we have an out clause for you. You can go, no penalty. Make the penalty smaller. So I would say, $40 million per school. That's still $80 million. $40 million per school is low. That is a low buyout. But you're making something. And I still think that they would think about signing that. That's a low buyout. It's giving them a bailout. It's giving them a life raft. They know the Pac-12 is going down now. And if Oregon and Washington leave the Pac-12, it is completely done. Like, they are the only glue that's left in this. But with the Four Corners going, that's the torpedo right there. That puts a big old hole. Now, Oregon and Washington, if they don't leave, they're still in there, so it's still glued together. But you're talking about 6 teams left. 6 teams. I think we're looking at the shelf life of the Pac-12. Jason Moore, thank you for the $2 donation, says, been saying it a while, Washington, Oregon, Stanford, and Notre Dame to the Big Ten. I can believe that. Notre Dame, the jury's still out. And I did a video on them, but I didn't get to edit because there were some other things out, so that's in the process. I'll put that out either tomorrow or the next day, depending on how much time I have tomorrow. I think there's a legitimate chance of Notre Dame joining the Big Ten, especially if the Big Ten brings in Stanford. I know the biggest argument is, well, they really hate Michigan. I get that, but that grudge is like 100 years old, and they would make a crap ton more money than they would in the ACC. It's the control issue that really makes me hesitate as far as actually predicting Notre Dame to the Big Ten. I need to do a video on that and try to figure out the pros and cons, because there's a lot of pros for Notre Dame going to the Big Ten. What are the cons? Sal Carmona says, sent you an Arizona mini helmet. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. I would definitely shout you out when I get the Arizona mini helmet. Which, by the way, recently we've been having like a little mini boom when it comes to mini helmets as well. We got a Rutgers mini helmet. We got a SMU mini helmet. We got a Memphis mini helmet. We got a Cal mini helmet. We got a Stanford mini helmet. I know a Utah mini helmet is on the way. I know Arizona mini helmet's on the way. I think Fresno State mini helmet's on the way, and Nevada. So a lot of mini helmets coming right now. There's really only a few big brands that aren't represented. Off the top of my head, I would say Notre Dame's not represented yet. Florida, Texas A&M, that one's a little surprising. Nebraska, but I think somebody mentioned that they might send a Nebraska one. And Oregon is not represented as well. So there's still a few big brands that aren't represented when it comes to mini helmets. But overall, there's some good representation for the mini helmets. Salt of the Earth, I see you. I see you in the chat. Speaking of the only two teams that I don't have for a mini helmet in the Big 12, your Texas Tech Red Raiders and Cincinnati. So only 2 more, and we will have the entire Big 12, and that's counting the new teams. We have UCF, we have BYU, and we have Houston. So we're only missing Cincinnati and Texas Tech. Anyways, I digress. I kind of went off on a trail. But anyways, Pac-12, I think we're seeing the shelf life. I think we're seeing a death date, if you will. I think the Pac-12 survives as a conference, but I don't think that they survive as a Power 5 conference. I think we're going to see the Four Corners jump before the 2023 season. Okay, they're going to announce it, and they'll become official members in 2024. That's how I see that happening. Oregon and Washington don't know what they're going to do. They eventually do want to go in the Big Ten. If they absolutely 100% are against the Big 12, there is the ACC option, and I have heard, and I did a video on it. It was not this past week, but the week before that, 2 weeks ago, I believe, that the ACC were talking to Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. I actually think that the ACC, if that's true, that's a big if, they should back off Stanford and Cal. Number one, it's not going to help you whenever it comes to TV deal. You're not big on the AAU status. You're not a shared conference like the Big Ten. Leave Cal and Stanford for the Big Ten. You should get Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, and Washington State. That would be a massive, massive addition for the ACC. In fact, I don't know why they don't try to do that. I think that's, that's actually a good video there right there. Well, I dropped my pens. This is how my brain works, and I have to write things down because if I don't, I will forget about it. And I kick myself a lot trying to remember a good video I did that I was talking about, and I don't. So ACC needs to talk to Oregon, Oregon State, Washington, and Wazoo. Makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that Oregon State and Washington State deserve to remain in a Power 5 conference. That's the one fear, not just me, a lot of people. More people out there than I realized actually like Oregon State and Washington State. Kind of surprised me. I've always enjoyed them. I like that their stadiums are, smaller, but still nice. They have nice stadiums, but they're not like this huge brand. But it kind of reminds me of West Virginia, where they have some really good seasons, but they're always overlooked. And I think they deserve to have a landing spot in a Power 5 conference. So I hope the ACC does that. I think that would be good for the ACC. The ACC needs help as well. Now, just bringing in Washington State, Oregon State's really not going to have it. It's really not going to help your TV deal. But if you bring in Washington, Oregon with Oregon State and Washington State, that could help that situation right now. And maybe it would encourage Notre Dame to join as a full-time member, not because they're adding any type of rivalry, because no, don't get Stanford, but because that turns the ACC in a coast-to-coast conference. And, the biggest excuse that Notre Dame gives as far as why they join the conference is they want to remain a national brand and schedule whoever they want. Well, that widens the ACC coast to coast, and you still have those out-of-conference games to where you can schedule your rivalries, and that's a good schedule. Notre Dame needs to get into conference to where they have an easier path to the playoffs, because as is, if they stay independent, they will never, ever get that bye week, and maybe at first that doesn't seem like a big deal, but I guarantee you, if Notre Dame starts making the playoffs and they don't have that bye week, eventually they'll see, man, that bye week is important. So, and I think that this is not the end of conference expansion, or playoff expansion either. I think it will progress, and it will progress in a direction to where they will reward even more being in a conference. That I do think that's the direction that the playoff expansion will go. Click and bait, dude. Yes, I'm not at the Slav Olympics. Those are actually tomorrow, but I'm actually down here where they are, and I will be at the Slav Olympics tomorrow. But yes, I am. John Teal, thank you for the $5 donation, says, you want the Four Corners, San Diego, and Fresno State. Go for a land grab in California, not just a footprint. Yeah, I agree with that. What about this? What if the Big 12 went after the four corner schools, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Oregon State, and Washington State? I think that would be a good deal as well. Because we know eventually, well, not even eventually, but Oregon and Washington is going to be able to remain in a Power 5 conference. They're fine, even if it's not the Big 10. If the Big 12 is a no-go for Oregon and Washington, then they still have the ACC. I'm sure the ACC would bring them in. But if they're okay with the Big 12, then the Big 12 is an option too. It's not necessarily for them to survive in a Power 5 conference, Big 10 or bust. Now, in their minds, it might be Big 10 or bust. That's the conference we want. We don't want anybody else. Well, if the Pac-12 goes down, then you're going to have to make some compromises. Maybe it's for a short time. Maybe it's for a decade. I don't know. But you're probably going to have to make a compromise to where, at least stay in the Big 12 until the Big 10 is ready for you. Otherwise, you're going to be going down with the sinking ship. And I can't imagine Oregon and Washington being in anything other than a Power 5 conference. That wouldn't make any sense to me at all. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. I think there's a better chance of Stanford and Cal being invited to the Big 10 because of the UCLA and USC aspect. On top of that, the research and academics. Remember, the Big 10 is a shared conference. What I mean by that is when you are accepted into the Big 10, it's because they see your resources. We're not talking about sports here. Not football, not basketball, not anything. When they accept you, yes, you need to have a decent football brand right now, but they look beyond that. They look at your resources, your research, how much money you bring in research, your libraries even. I mean, on-campus stuff as well. Like, everything is shared in the Big 10. So I think they go after Stanford and Cal because of everything but football. And maybe Notre Dame is more encouraged to go to the Big 10 as well. Stanford's a rival. They already brought in USC. That's one rival. They already have a bunch of rivals in there. Like Purdue's a decent rival. Michigan is a grudge rival right there. You bring in Stanford. That's multiple rivals. So your conference slate is filled with rivals, and you're out of conference. You can still play your Navy, your Boston College if you want to. Pitt's a decent rivalry. Georgia Tech's a decent rivalry. You can, you don't have to worry about scheduling your out of conference with your Stanfords and your USC's and your Michigans or anybody in in the Big 10. I saw a comment earlier. What was it? Says, why do you keep saying Washington and Oregon together like a deal? What if the Big 10 wanted Washington, Stanford, Arizona schools? Not the Arizona schools. No, I can believe. Honestly, I can believe Washington and Stanford. That would make a ton of sense. Washington is your football brand. They have great research, great academics. Stanford is elite academics. So you would be getting a combo. Washington with the football, along with the academics, and then Stanford with great academics and decent football. So I don't disagree with you on that. It's just, to me, in my head, Washington, Oregon do make sense as together, going together. It might not happen. You're absolutely right. It might not happen. Hopefully I don't butcher your name, buddy. Arturo Balderas. I'm going to try it again. Arturo Balderas. Thank you for the $9.99 donation. Says, if and when Florida State leaves the ACC and the dominoes start falling, what teams do you think realistically does the Big 12 have a chance of adding? That is a great question. I'm going to emphasize what he said realistically, because we can all, I think they have a chance with this. I think they have, realistically. I like that you put that word in there. So, realistically, I think the Big 12, and I'm going to name off the two teams that I don't want the Big 12 to get, but they would have a realistic chance. Boston College and Wake Forest, and even Duke. But you don't want any of those three. So, let's throw them to the side. The teams that you want, that you would have a realistic chance of getting: Pitt. The Big Ten does not want Pitt, all right? Even though Pitt has AAU status, they already have Penn State, and the Big Ten just wouldn't want to add Pitt. The SEC, no, they don't want Pitt. Pitt is a realistic choice for the Big 12. I do think we can get Pitt. Syracuse also a realistic choice. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think Syracuse even has AU status. Going back to Pitt, their football brand is very, very strong right now. They're going to be a strong addition for the Big 12, and of course the backyard brawl. For Syracuse, they actually have the largest fan base, and I'm talking about football, not just basketball. Football, largest fan base, not counting Notre Dame. Whenever I look, let me reference this real quick since you brought up that question. Whenever I looked at the TV viewership and the Florida State athletic directors, who is the one that came up with this graphic and presented it, Syracuse was actually number 6, 1.76 million, and that was on a down stretch. So that's pretty good. You're bringing in viewership. If you also get Pitt, then you have Syracuse, Pitt, Syracuse, West Virginia. Great rivalries there. So Pitt, Syracuse, Louisville is a third option. Louisville would not be accepted by the Big Ten. Their academics are not even close to Big Ten standards. They don't have any AU status. Sorry, Louisville, you have no shot of getting into the Big Ten. The SEC, we have more of a shot, but it's still not happening. Kentucky would throw a fit, and it really doesn't have the footprint of the SEC. But the Big 12 has a realistic shot of getting Louisville, and Louisville is 4th in viewership from 2014 to 2022 with 2.02 million on average every season. So Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech, the chances aren't as high. It depends on if Virginia Tech to the Big 12 depends on if the Big 10 gets Virginia. If the SEC is able to get Virginia, then Virginia Tech's not going to the Big 10, and of course, they're not going to the SEC. SEC already has Virginia. So Virginia Tech, all depends on who the Big 10 gets. If they get Virginia, then we're good. Big 12 will get them. But if not, if the SEC gets Virginia, if the SEC gets Virginia, then we're good. But if the Big 10 gets Virginia, then the SEC would want a footprint in the state of Virginia, and they would get Virginia Tech. So those are the 4 schools. Everybody else, I don't think we have a shot. Of course, I mentioned Duke, Boston College, Wake Forest, but we don't want those. So it is Syracuse, Pitt, Louisville, and Virginia Tech. Great question. Let's go on to Matt Ritson. Thank you for the $1.99 donation, buddy. Appreciate it. It says, Pac-12 today, new 22 million for 5 years. No SMU, San Diego State. You're 100% correct, and that's why it wasn't voted on. That's why we haven't heard an announcement on, San Diego State or SMU or Fresno State. Nobody, because the presidents are like, no, that's way too low. 22. Are you kidding me? Think about that, guys. I know I mentioned it earlier in the live show, but really think about that. So the offer that was on the table that they totally rejected was a solid $10 million less per team per year. No wonder why they didn't even take a vote on it. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, could you imagine? I don't know if he showed the deal by email or had a conference or whatever, but could you imagine these presidents getting this offer, whether it's in person by voice or seeing it, on the computer screen, fax, whatever it is? Their reaction was, oh, by the way, we have an email, guys. Let's go check it out. Oh, looks like we have a TV deal. Let's see. Is that a 22 million? No. I can't be the only president that thinks that this is not even worth voting on. No, they all agreed. Not worth voting on. It was way too low. And I agree. It was way too low, and they shouldn't vote on it. It's ridiculous. And this is why we haven't heard an announcement as far as San Diego State and SMU, because nobody's signing the grant of rights. Therefore, you can't add more teams because nobody's agreeing on anything. And on top of that, the deal is so low, you add more teams, and you have to split it. That $22 million per year per team per year, that's without San Diego State, SMU. You add SMU and San Diego State, you're splitting that up more. So you could be looking at, what, $18 million per team per year, something like that? Maybe 19? I don't know. Oh, man. Train wreck. John Teal, thank you for the $5 donation, says, I don't know about Washington, Oregon being outside the pack. They've lived off of California talent from day one. They could end up like Nebraska, once they lost Big 12 Texas access. That's true, but think about this. Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten, they're really not losing that access because USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten. So that's the only conference that kind of exists out of your argument. But I would agree with you as far as them going to the Big 12 or the ACC. However, going back to let's go back to talking about the ACC. So I was more in favor of the ACC talking to Washington State, Oregon State. I think that's a great combo. That's two in-state rivalries that's going to draw some viewership. And, of course, you're locking down two really good states, Washington and Oregon. But since you brought up that point, John Teal, and it is a good point. It is, I promise. So let's scratch Washington State, Oregon State. I hate doing that because I don't want them to get left out in the cold. But for the sake of your argument, let's scratch them and put Stanford and Cal back on the board. So, all right. Now, that's two conferences you can't say about that because if they go to the Big Ten, USC and UCLA are already in the Big Ten. So they're not losing the California pipeline. If they go to the ACC with Stanford and Cal, they're not losing that California pipeline. So really it's just joining the Big 12, which might be one of the major reasons why they don't want to join the Big 12. Not just the academics, but also losing the pipeline to California. But I do think they would be willing to swallow that to be a part of the Big 12 for a little bit if the Pac-12 does go under and the Big 10 says, not right now. And we know we can get you later. Think about that, guys. The Big 10 knows for a fact, anytime they snap their fingers, they can have Oregon and Washington. So they're taking their time. They're taking their time. They could be using Oregon and Washington as their wild card, trying to see if the SEC is going to do something. Let's see what the Big 12 is going to do. Let's see what the ACC is going to do. Because they know for a fact, all they have to do is snap that finger, and Oregon and Washington are, boom, members of the Big Ten. So that I think that's an aspect of this conference realignment as far as Oregon and I see you, Sal. Whenever I get that Arizona mini helmet, I will definitely put the X on Arizona, not because of anything bad, but because we won't need it anymore. Whenever I get new helmets, I update it. I haven't done it at SMU, so thanks for calling me out on that. And I need to update Stanford and Cal and Memphis. So thank you for reminding me. I do need to update that. But whenever I get Arizona, I'll do that. And Oregon and whoever else I get. Anyways, so that's something to keep in mind. Okay? That's something to keep in mind. The Big Ten is in no hurry for adding Oregon and Washington because they know they have them. All they have to do is make the phone call, say the word, and Oregon and Washington will be jumping off their seat and jumping into the Big Ten. So they're not in a hurry. They're just trying to figure out when they want to do it. Let's see what the SEC is going to do. Let's see if the Big 12 can grab the four corners. Let's see what happens with the ACC. I think they're looking at the ACC right now. They're trying to figure out if the ACC can last till 2036. We heard Florida State's athletic director and Clemson's athletic director come out and say, yeah, we need unequal revenue share because we're making chump change compared to the other conferences. And we heard Florida State's athletic director said, yeah, we even got legal counsel and looked into how to get out of the ACC, and it would cost us $120 million. I think that's just a buyout. I think for them to get out of the grant of rights, it's going to be more like between $400 and $500 million. But still, I mean, why it would be between $400 and $500 million and him actually say $120 million, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out that one. I could be wrong. Maybe it is only $120 million. Only. It's still a lot of money, but compared to $500 million, it's not that much. So, Big Ten might be trying to figure out if these teams are serious about this. What about the 8 teams voting to dissolve the grant of rights? You can get them for basically nothing. Who would, do they have spots open? Have they promised spots? I've already given my list multiple times. I think the Big Ten, if they do get teams out of the ACC, it's going to be Florida State. Florida State is pursuing AU status. They have been for the past 5 years. Big Ten could, they have the inside track of that. They can manipulate if they want to. They can help Florida State get that AU status. Once that happens, that's the check. That's the ballgame. Florida State to the Big Ten. And of course, I've mentioned the bad blood between Florida State and the SEC. I don't see that happening. There's too much friction. The money is comparable. In fact, I think Florida State would make a little bit more in the Big Ten. The academics, the shared resources, Florida State to the Big Ten makes a lot of sense. And that would give Big Ten two major states, California, because they got UCLA and USC, and the state of Florida, which is Florida State. So Florida State, Georgia Tech. Some people disagree with me on Georgia. Well, Georgia Tech sucks in football. Yes, but man, their research and their academics is top tier. They do great on that aspect. And on top of that, even though they don't have a good football program, as bad as Georgia Tech has been, they were number 7 in viewership from 2014 to 2022 with 1.70 million. That's not bad for having a sucking football team. It's not. It's not that much below West Virginia. That makes me like, oh man, Georgia Tech nipping on our heels in viewership, and they have a crappy team. So you are bringing in viewership that is a footprint in a new state in Georgia. So you're gaining Florida, Georgia, and a great recruiting hotbed in the city of Atlanta. So the next team would be probably North Carolina. I'm not as high on North Carolina as I was because I saw these viewership numbers for football between 2014 and 2022. North Carolina was number 11 with 1.57 million. That's not a lot, but their academics and being a new state will get them into the Big Ten. And then Virginia. Unfortunately for the Big 12, I do think that the Big Ten goes out and gets Virginia. Virginia, great academics. Virginia had better viewership than North Carolina, surprisingly, in football. They were number 8 with 1.68 million. So think about that. Georgia Tech was 7 with 1.70 million. Virginia was 8 with 1.68 million. And North Carolina, shame on you, number 11, 1.57 million. Never thought Georgia Tech would have better ratings, I guess, in a 9-year period over Virginia and North Carolina. That would actually surprise me. John Teal, thank you for the $2 donation, says, or ACC could take Washington State, Oregon State, Stanford, and Cal. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So in that particular case, you know what? I might write that. Dude, that's not bad. That is not. Let me screenshot that too, man. I got you. That's not bad at all. Where's it? Right here. I wrote down. Why did I flip the page off? I was looking at viewership. So we're gonna go. Big 12 gets 4 corners, and ACC gets Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal. That's very doable, man. I've never thought of that. I actually really like that scenario. Like I mentioned earlier, I saw. Thank you, Andre King, for the $5 donation. I saw from multiple sources that the ACC was talking to Washington, Oregon, Stanford, and Cal. Why not add Oregon State and Washington State? I prefer Oregon State, Washington. Just get all 6 of them. I like that. Get all 6 of them, and that's going to help your TV deal. That's still going to make your academics elite. It makes you a coast-to-coast conference. Buddy, I really like that. Does anybody see any downside on that for the teams or the ACC? I mean, you're bringing 6 in. Washington and Oregon not losing that California pipeline like you mentioned earlier. I like it, man. And you're keeping the in-state rivalry. It's not a bad idea, man. Not a bad idea. Cyclone Steve, thank for the $2 donation, says Washington, Oregon, Florida State, all talk. Only the Big 12 is open for business. I don't disagree with that. I really don't. Having said that, the ACC needs to get out of this all talk only thing because perhaps the grant of rights does keep everybody locked in until 2036, but that's it. What happens to the ACC after 2036? Are they able to negotiate a TV deal that's comparable with the SEC and the Big Ten? I doubt it. I doubt it. I think when that happens, I think that's when you see the 4 teams go to the Big Ten, 4 teams go to the SEC, and 4 teams go to the Big 12. So the ACC, I agree with you, Cyclone Steve. I'm not disagreeing with you. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you. Hold on, I missed something here. Never mind. I do agree with you, but what I'm saying is, because I agree with you, I think the ACC needs to get serious, not just all talk, like you say, and I agree with. They need to get serious. Otherwise, the ACC is they have a shelf life as well too. How can the ACC not look at the Pac-12 and go, I don't want that to happen to us? What are they thinking over there? So they see what's happening with the Pac-12, that they can't get a decent TV deal, right? And that teams are literally talking to other conferences, and we're getting rumors all over the place. Nothing but bad publicity for the Pac-12. And I believe a lot of these sources because if the Pac-12 had officially added San Diego State and SMU and had a decent TV deal, had a TV partner, and everybody was saying they need to make an announcement because if I were the Pac-12 and all that stuff was falling in line, I would want to shut everybody up and be like, look, no, we've added in, we've got a decent TV deal, so y'all need to be quiet. So, that's why I'm very confident about all these sources saying this because we're not hearing anything from the Pac-12. The ACC needs to be taking notes, and they need to be getting serious right now. I know 2036 is 13 years from now. Is that what you're satisfied with? 13 years and you're good? Guys, come on. Learn from other people's mistakes and learn from your own mistake. I don't understand it. 100% agree, Cyclone Steve. It is all talk, but it needs to become more than all talk. John T, thank you for the $5 donation, says, everyone talks about the big 3 states for recruiting, but there's a 4th. Louisiana is serious with talent. Tulane could be a sneak attack for the Big Ten. I agree with you, and I think that was a missed opportunity for the Pac-12. I would have actually put Tulane above SMU. I would have gone after San Diego State and Tulane. I understand they won in Texas. That's a great state, but SMU is a terrible brand. They cannot fill a 32,000-seat stadium. So, but for the Big Ten is a different story. The Big Ten isn't desperate. The Big Ten can get the cream of the crop when it comes to academics and sports combination. They get the best of the best. So maybe down the road, after they get some of these big brands and they have a massive TV deal, and Tulane is willing to accept unequal revenue share, like way unequal revenue share, like maybe a 4th compared to everybody else, which before you point the finger at me and go, that's mean, Golden Blue, well, compared to what they're making now in the AAC, that's almost triple. So trust me, Tulane would be more than happy, more than willing to jump to the Big Ten for $20 million per team per year. That's terrible for a Power 5 conference, but trust me, compared to the AAC, they would take that in a heartbeat. I just don't think they're at the top of the list. I don't. And I do agree with you, John Teal. I do think that Louisiana has a ton of talent. I do. I just don't think that Tulane has the brand strength right now. I don't. D-Day, thank you for the $1.99 donation. Says, sounds like ESPN and Fox have to bless any moves. 100% correct. 100% correct. That is correct. And whenever you say that, though, it kind of makes you scratch your head why the Big Ten is balking on Oregon and Washington, right? You're correct, D-Day. ESPN and Fox do have to bless those moves. So why doesn't Fox want Oregon and Washington? Is that more Fox? Is that more Big Ten? I don't know. Was the Big Ten actually okay with them? Which I'm hearing not, and Fox wasn't. I think that's more on the Big Ten. But if you're Fox and you're looking at the Big Ten and Oregon and Washington applied, and you're like, why do you not want them, guys? Do you not realize that would still help with the revenue? That would get us pretty much the entire Western Seaboard. What kind of communications do the networks and the conferences have besides ironing out the TV deals? What kind of conversations go on? Like, did they have a conversation whenever Oregon and Washington apply? And the Big Ten's like, no, and Fox is like, why? That would be a great addition. Why? Can you tell us why? It really makes you wonder what goes on behind closed doors, because it honestly, to me, it doesn't make sense why the Big Ten didn't add them. It doesn't. I thought that was the first. Whenever I heard that Washington and Oregon applied to the Big Ten, I'm like, yeah, it's happening. And then the Big Ten turned them down. I was like, somebody please explain that to me. My gosh. Arturo Balderas, I'm guessing that I said your name correctly because I didn't see a correction in the comments. But seriously, if I'm butchering your name, please let me know. I'm not trying to disrespect you. Arturo Balderas, thank you for the $4.99 donation. Says, the sad part is the Big 12 lost and is losing age-old rivalries. Red River Rivalry, Kansas, Missouri, Bedlam, etc. Backyard Brawl would be a good replacement. Exactly right. Mark Rogers made this point, okay? College football has what they call rivalry week, right? Where Georgia Tech plays Georgia, Louisville plays Kentucky, Clemson plays South Carolina, Ohio State plays Michigan, USC plays Notre Dame. The one conference that don't have pretty much any rivalries on rivalry weekend is the Big 12. And really the only decent rivalry, well, there's Kansas State is good in state, but that game is bounced all over the schedule. Even the Red River Rivalry was mid-season. It wasn't the last game of the year. I don't know why the Big 12 did that. The Big 12 needed to make the Red River Rivalry the last game of the year, but there's probably some type of tradition because of the Texas State Fair and all that stuff that I'm not aware of. But that's one thing that's hurting the Big 12. Very good point, buddy. That is very good. And by adding Pitt, you're adding a tremendous rivalry, not necessarily as a replacement, but almost as like a softening blow for losing a great rivalry like that. I agree with you, but I would take that a step further by adding Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Syracuse. You're not just adding the Backyard Brawl. You're also adding the Black Diamond Trophy rivalry. You're also adding the Syracuse-Pitt rivalry, the Syracuse-Virginia Tech rivalry, the Syracuse-West Virginia rivalry, Louisville, West Virginia, Louisville-Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Louisville-Syracuse. That's like at least 5 rivalries right there that you're bringing in. So I really like that comment. I agree with it 100%. And that is the one thing that has hurt the Big 12. And at least we can say this. Even though I don't like the Big 12 adding the 4 corners, you're adding some rivalry relevance. Not just Arizona State, not just Colorado and Kansas State, Colorado and Oklahoma State, other Big 12 rivalries. Utah and BYU is a massive rivalry, and if the Big 12 can lock that in, that's going to make them some money. Rivalries. I need to make, that's another, I like it. Let me go back to, I'm going to come to you, John Teal, here in just a second, but let me go to that previous comment. I want to actually screenshot that because I'm going to do a video on that as well. Telling you guys, this is how my brain works. This is how my brain works. You are witnessing it in person. All right, let's go back to John Teal. Give me 1 second. Big 12's biggest flaw. Not very many good rivalries. And honestly, the closest thing West Virginia has as far as a rivalry goes in the Big 12 is Texas, and they're leaving. And the funny thing is, as soon as the Big 12 announced that they were accepting Cincinnati as a member, oh, Golden Blue should be happy about that. That could be a great rivalry between West Virginia and Cincinnati. That is not, no. Maybe eventually it could turn into a rivalry, but coming into the Big 12, Cincinnati and West Virginia is not a rivalry. I'm telling you, West Virginia fans don't really care about playing Cincinnati, and Cincinnati really doesn't care about playing West Virginia. Because of our geography and how the Big 12 is situated, eventually, yeah, that could become a rivalry. But right now, it's worthless. In fact, I think Cincinnati's like 3-18 versus West Virginia. John Teal, thank you for the $5 donation, says, it's not just about Tulane. It's about the Big Ten invading the SEC territory. You jump Florida, you've got California. It's close enough to backdoor Texas. I think sneaky. Again, I do agree with you on that. It's just, is that a good enough reason to take a not so great brand in Tulane? Ask yourself this, John. How much money is Tulane going to make for the Big Ten? I agree with everything you're saying. I think that, the Big Ten, it's a fact. The Big Ten would be invading SEC territory. Grabbing Florida State, you're grabbing the state of Florida. They already have the state of California. I agree with all your points, but you have to ask yourself, how much money would Tulane actually make the Big Ten? Not that much. Not that much. That goes back to the point that I was saying when we were talking about Tulane. The only way I see Big Ten taking Tulane is unequal revenue share. John Teal, I see your comment. Good enough to beat USC. Yes. I am agreeing with you. They had a good football team, SEC territory, great recruiting, all that stuff. I'm talking about the brand. How much money would the brand bring to the Big Ten? And don't forget about this. The year before this past year, they had a magical season. No doubt about that. Willie Fritz is a good coach. But remember this. In 2021, Tulane, I think they either had a 1-11 season or a 2-10 season. 2-10 is I think it was 1-11. I really do. But it's either 1-11 or 2-10. So they don't have sustained success. They had a magical season. They caught the eyeballs of everybody. Thanks, John Glizzy. Jake Glizzy. I don't know why I said John. I think I mixed up John Teal and Jake Glizzy. Excuse me. 2-10. Yes. So they had a bad football season. Yes, they had a magical season. Yes, good enough to beat USC. And I'm sure the Pac-12 laughed at that. It was hilarious, especially with 4.5 minutes left. USC had, 15-point lead? I think it was 45-20, and they come back and beat them. It was hilarious. It was a great story. And they fit all that criteria. Invading the SEC. Great recruiting grounds for the Big Ten. But how much money would the brand of Tulane make for the Big Ten? Do they make enough money for the Big Ten to say, yes, we will take you? I'm not so sure. And Tulane does have good academics and research and all that stuff, but nowhere close to what Cal and Stanford. That's kind of the big difference. And plus the state of California and travel partners for USC and UCLA. They're trying to keep them appeased. It's definitely a difference. And remember, Stanford and Cal, they've been in Pac-12 for a while. They are established in the Pac-12. Tulane is unproven. Yes, they were in the SEC for a while, but that's been a long time ago, very long time ago. So you can't really count that. How would they do in the Big Ten too? I don't. I'm like everybody else. I think that the Big Ten is top heavy, and the rest of it is very watered down with your Northwesterns, your Indianas. Illinois was good last year, but for the most part, your Illinois, Nebraska has, my gosh, they have fallen off a cliff. Your Rutgers, your Maryland's, even though Maryland was so-so, Minnesota's, even though they've been average at best. I mean, basically, when you talk about the Big Ten, it comes down to Ohio State, Michigan State sometimes, Penn State, Wisconsin. I can't really put Purdue in there because they're hit and miss too. So it's really five solid brands at the top that make it super competitive. And there is that middle ground and then a fall off. I just think Tulane would be on that bottom tier. I don't think they add enough value to the Big Ten. And on top of that, think about this. Even though you're invading the SEC and you're getting that recruiting ground, that is ridiculous travel, is Tulane. We're not talking about Florida State. We're not talking about USC. We're not talking about UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cat. We're talking about Tulane. Is the Tulane brand worth that travel and logistics nightmare? I would say not. No, I wouldn't say so. I do think they would have been a good pickup for the Pac-12, but once again, the Pac-12 just keeps proving bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. Why in the world would you even pursue SMU other than they're near DFW and their brand is horrible. That was a terrible decision. Think about this. George Kliavkoff wasted valuable Pac-12 money by flying to Dallas, taking a tour. They went out to a nice restaurant and all that stuff, and flying back. How much the entire trip cost, I don't know. But he wasted that money. It was all for nothing. Nothing. These are the bad decisions that we're seeing the Pac-12 make. John Teal, another $5 donation. Appreciate the support, buddy. Says, I'd argue the money is hidden. It's very possible. Very possible. When's the last time a Big Ten team to beat an SEC team? You need a foot in the door to the talent so kids will come. I agree with that. I do. I'm not disagreeing with you, John. I'm not. What I'm asking you is, and I know you kind of answered it right there saying the money is hidden. I understand what you're saying, but in order for the Big Ten to take a gamble like that, it needs to be more obvious. It can't be, well, this could be a diamond in the rough, so we're going to take a chance and not add any revenue. I don't think the Big Ten adding Tulane is going to add any revenue either. So you're taking a chance on a team that's not going to add any revenue. It's another mouth to feed. Maybe it pays off, but maybe it doesn't. I think in order for the Big Ten to actually add Tulane, it would have to be more obvious. I mean, the Big Ten knows something that we don't, and they would. I don't know. But going back to the ACC and the comment that said the Big 12 is the only conference that's actually open for business. Florida State talking to Oregon and Washington is all talk. I agree with that, but I think the ACC needs to get serious. Otherwise, we could be looking at Roger Dodger. That's very possible. I think they did. Washington has a big stadium. I think they have over 70,000. The only stadium that's even comparable to Washington in the Pac-12 is USC. And after the renovation, USC is, I think, 72,000. It used to be like close to 90,000. at least in the 80,000s, but they renovated, which was worth it. It looks much better, but the capacity is down in the 70s. So the only stadium that can actually compete with Washington as far as capacity goes is Washington. And Washington had a great season, and they were selling out on a regular basis. John T. thank you for the $2 donation, says, if paired with Florida State, only so many blue bloods. I agree with that too. But Tulane, Oregon, Tulane, Washington, Tulane, Georgia Tech, Tulane, North Carolina, Tulane, even Virginia. You see what I'm saying? Like, it gets more comparable with Tulane and Virginia. I still think Virginia would be more valuable, but it's more comparable. And even North Carolina was much lower on the viewership than what I thought, down at number 11 with only 1.57 million. That surprised me. Maybe that's the closest comparison. I don't know. But I think Oregon beats Tulane as far as their value goes to the Big Ten. I think Washington, Cal, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Virginia by a hair, North Carolina still probably, but maybe I'm way off. I don't know, John. You're making a good argument. I will say that. I just don't see the Big Ten taking a chance, and it would be taking a chance. It would be. Big Ten going after Tulane would be taking a chance. Pac-12 going after Tulane, that should have happened. I will say that. The Pac-12 should have went after Tulane. They should have been at the top of the list. They check all the boxes as far as research, academics, all that stuff. And, they just beat USC. That's got to be bonus points. USC on their way out, and Tulane beats them, 15-point comeback in the last 4 minutes. That's got to be an extra check, right? So for the Pac-12, 100% yes. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, Tulane. Big Ten, not so sure. D-Day, thank you for the $4.99 donation, says, wild scenario. Hey, welcome to Go to Blue. That's what we do. What if Florida State, Notre Dame, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado, Utah, Washington, Oregon, and a few others got together to form a brand new conference? Could they cash in? Dude, you just earned yourself a screenshot. And the video idea is just crazy enough for me to do a video on. So let me write the teams down real quick so I can have it in front of me real quick. Let's see. Let me see what number we come up with too, by the way. Florida State, Notre Dame, let's see, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, let's see here, Colorado, Utah, Washington, Oregon. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would add one more in there, maybe Georgia Tech. And I know that's not a great brand, but still, we got to add 10. So the video that I'm going to do, and it's based on your comment, is Florida State, Notre Dame, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado, Utah, Washington, Oregon, Georgia Tech. That's a coast-to-coast conference. Pretty good academics across the board. Notre Dame would be in control of that conference, so maybe that would give them some type of incentive to join that conference. Hey, we are Notre Dame. Oh crap! I got the headline for you too. Notre Dame starts its own conference. There we go. Now, if you put that spin on it, that makes it seem even more believable. So Notre Dame starts its own conference, and based on your comment, I might not go with all these teams, but I'll go with most of them. So based on your comment, Notre Dame starts its own conference, and they go out and they get Florida State, they get Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado, Utah, Washington, Oregon, and Georgia Tech to start their own conference. I like it. I like it so much that I'm going to do a video on it. Well done. Well done. Let me make sure. I don't remember screenshotting that. I think I did, but I don't remember. So just in case, worst case scenario, I have 2 screenshots of it, right? Okay, let's go to FSU. Oh, what's going on, buddy? Haven't seen you in a while. FSU 45. Good evening, Golden Blue and everyone. I'm excited to see where Washington and Florida State go. Go Mountaineers. So you're wondering Washington and Florida State. I know you're a Florida State fan. I'm trying to figure out your connection to Washington. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What if both of them end up in the Big Ten? I can see that happening. What if they draw Florida State out of the ACC? Maybe the Big Ten only gets 2 teams out of the ACC, and they get Florida State and I would say Georgia Tech would be the best brand. Better TV ratings than I thought. Great academics, solid footprint in a new state, hotbed in recruiting in the city of Atlanta. I like it. And then on the other side, you bring in Washington and Stanford. What about that combo, guys? Florida State and Georgia Tech from the ACC, Washington and Stanford from the Pac-12. You're getting good football brands with Washington and Florida State, and you're getting great academic institutions with Georgia Tech and Stanford. And a nice little side dish is Georgia Tech actually gets decent viewership. They were in the upper half, number 7, which is technically the upper half of the ACC, beating out, ready for your mind to be blown if you haven't heard this already, Georgia Tech from 2014 to 2022. They beat Virginia, they beat Pitt, they beat NC State, they beat North Carolina, Boston College, Wake Forest, Duke. What surprised me is Georgia Tech beating NC State and North Carolina in TV viewership in that stretch. Wow. I'm telling you, there's some value out there for Georgia Tech. There's not enough buzz, no pun intended, for Georgia Tech out there. I could certainly see the Big Ten going out and getting Georgia Tech. Bottom line is, going back to Pac-12, bottom line is, I think we're seeing the shelf life of the Pac-12. Arizona did, in fact, reach out to the Big 12, which was the game changer. It's the game changer because, remember when all the Pac-12 teams came out and made that unity statement video, whatever you want to call it? That's showing that there is no unity, that they rejected, and it has been confirmed, the dollar amount was $22 million per team per year, which is $10 million less than the Big Ten. That was rejected. No one signing the grant of rights. Arizona is sick of these charades, sick of, George Kliavkoff over-promising and under-delivering, and they are in a world of trouble. So Arizona talks to the Big 12. Arizona tells the Big 12, I think you got a shot with Arizona State, Utah, Colorado. And then today we find out that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 are indeed talking to the Four Corners. And then later on in the day, and who was the source? It was a prominent source. I think it was either 365, 247, CBS, Fox, or SI. I know it wasn't ESPN. It was one of those 5 prominent sources that was saying that the Big 12 is actually talking to six teams from the Pac-12. Let me write that down just in case I forget. 12 talking to 6 Pac-12 teams. And I'll go back and look at the screenshot, put it on the video so you'll see the actual source. So I'm very confident that the Big 12 is talking to the Four Corners because Arizona reached out, and then today a lot of sources talking about it. Not as confident, but it is believable that the rumor that the Big 12 is talking to 6 Pac-12 teams could be true. Could be true. I'm waiting to see if more sources confirm that before I'm actually really, really confident about that. So we'll see. By the way, Skylar, somebody did send in a Syracuse mini helmet. So Syracuse is represented in the mini helmets whenever it comes to gold uploading. That was actually early in the game. I was surprised about that. But I should have been because Syracuse does have the largest fan base in the ACC, not counting Notre Dame. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I got to get to bed because I have the Slob Olympics competition. I am the reigning champ, so I have to defend it. If you're not subscribed, this is what we do, guys. College football every day, and I'm not scared to make speculation. Even if it sounds crazy, you never know. You have to explore every avenue. I don't claim to be ESPN, CBS, Fox, or anything like that. I am Golden Blued, and I'm here to entertain you during the off season. And the trend for a college football YouTube channel is usually boom month right before the season, then it levels off, but good months, and then it drops in the off season. But not for Golden Blued. We actually had one of our best months in February. So hit the subscribe button if you like being entertained while talking about college football, not just about anything, but college football. Which, by the way, Brandon Collins, appreciate you becoming a member here at Golden Blued. So if that's what you like, I'm telling you, hit the subscribe. You can always unsubscribe if you don't like my videos. There's always that option. But go ahead, hit the subscribe button. At least give us a try. Make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Even if you weren't able to catch us live and you're watching a replay, I'm telling you, that like button is very, very important. That's what tells YouTube, hey, people like watching this video, suggest it more. So I'd greatly appreciate that. David Z, thank you for the $2 donation, says, good luck tomorrow. Thanks for the content. Hey, I enjoy doing this too. And my goal for tomorrow is to finish top 10. The first Live Olympics, I finished, I think, 7th. Last year, I came out of nowhere and finished 1st. So this year, as long as I finish top 10, I'm satisfied. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to defend it. Okay? I am. I want to win it again. That would be awesome. I would be the first ever back-to-back Slav champion. So that's the goal. Yes. What I'm saying is I would be okay as long as I finish top 10. FSU 45, thank you for the $5 donation, says, Golden Blued, I have 8 favorite college football teams. Wow. And Washington is one of them. I picked my teams 30-some years ago. Not the first person I heard say something like that. Now, I've never heard anybody having 30, or not 30, but 8, excuse me. I knew one dude who had 5 favorite college football teams. Let's see if I can remember. This was like 15, 20 years ago. I knew Florida State was a favorite. I knew USC was one of his favorites. South Carolina was a favorite. Who was the other two? Texas and maybe it was. I think it was Washington. No, it wasn't Washington. Who was it? Come on. Oh, it was Notre Dame. I didn't say Notre Dame, or it was Notre Dame. But anyways, 8. That's impressive, man. That's impressive. I know your favorite's Florida State. I think your second favorite is West Virginia. Third favorite, I would guess, would be Washington. That would be my guess for your top 3. 1990. Yeah, that's when they won the national championship too. And I remember that. I was 6 years old, 7 years old, something like that. I think I was 7, about to turn 8 whenever that happened. That was a pretty cool year. Only 2 years after West Virginia got the national championship. Anyways, guys, I got to get off here and get some rest. The competition is tomorrow. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out. Shout out to everybody. We did hit 13,000 subscribers, which let me put the banner on. Right before I went live, there's our count. 13,063 subscribers. Man, you guys have absolutely blown me away, guys. Blown me away. This is amazing. Amazing. I never thought we would get this far and this short. I feel like I'm dreaming and somebody's going to pinch me and I'm going to wake up. Seriously. That's how amazing this is. Anyways, hit the like button on the way out. And I'll try to go live tomorrow, but I can't guarantee it because I don't know what time I'm going to get home. I'll definitely get at least one video out, but it is going to be a busy day. But we're going to defend the trophy tomorrow. Hopefully we bring it back. If not, top 10, I'm good with that, and we'll see what happens. But as of today, right now, tonight, it is official. Golden Blued is out.